Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of Mic'd Up Sports, a show that goes in depth with the people who build our sports community. And if you're watching this live on Facebook, we hope you are celebrating a snowy, windy Festivus day. And if you're watching this on demand through our YouTube channel, we're glad you can join us. But I mentioned Festivus because my guest displayed multiple feats of strength as an athlete for Maranatha Christian Academy and Missouri State University women's basketball. She is a two-time Class A state champion and Athena Award winner at Maranatha Christian Academy and made the honor roll, I believe, every year at Missouri State. Onye Osemenam. Onye, thanks for coming on and thanks for joining us in the middle of your break between didactic and clinical, if I'm correct. You're deep into the PA studies now, so even though you're not getting buckets anymore with the Lady Bears, you'll find a way to get some wins as a PA. And I'm not sure what your ambitions are, but what is your ultimate goal as you continue your PA studies?
So, yeah, PA is my goal. That's what I'm working towards right now. I'm about to start my second year of PA school. And yeah, we'll see where it takes me. I'm not 100% sure what specialty I'd like to go into at this point. Maybe internal medicine, maybe cardiology. We'll see what happens, but I'm very, very excited to see what the future holds.
Well, I'm sure you've heard this joke more than once. Hopefully folks like myself won't need your services anytime soon.
I do get that a lot.
But if something happens, I know I've got you on speed dial, so.
And hey, it's always good to, stay up to date with your yearly physicals and everything. Doesn't necessarily mean that if anything is wrong, it's just making sure that you're healthy. So
I remember too, I was binge watching Jeopardy and I told you this story and the category came up when I was watching all these old archives called the human body. And I'm going, I know somebody who would ace that category. I don't know how you were with that show, but I'm like, there's at least one subject where she would run the table.
I think I do pretty well. Yeah.
What about Shakespeare and the other categories?
I've never been a big Shakespeare fan, so I might be able to wing it, but I don't know. My confidence is a little shaky when it comes to that type of stuff.
I'm the same way, even though I was a big fan of the show. I am amazed at the number of clues I can get right, but I've always enjoyed that kind of TV where intelligence and smarts and being a nerd is rewarded. And
oh yeah,
I would
cool
say
to be smart.
It is. Well, I would say your smarts have taken you far. And we actually have a comment that dropped just as we get started from someone who is close to you. She goes by the name Colette, who says, "Hello, Mike and Onye."
That's my mom. Hi, Mom.
And I was impressed at how much she and her family remembered who I was, because my one regret with guests like yourself and Nia Holly and Tia Albert that I've had on, I heard all about you, but I didn't get to cover you as much as I probably should have as athletes. Tia being one of the all-time scoring greats, and Nia Holly won Miss Basketball. You set the all-time school rebounding record until Jacqueline Jarnett passed it. But one mark still stands. When you left high school, you were ranked 6th all-time in the state of Minnesota for career blocks, and you are still 6th. So
awesome.
So my point being, when Colette and your family remember the interview I did with you after you won your 2nd state title, I'm going, man, you still remember that. And I felt bad as a basketball fan that I didn't cover you more often.
Hey, it happens. It happens. But we got to build a great friendship over the years, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
We have indeed. And speaking of your parents, it's something going back into the archives when you were a student athlete. You got some clips and some feature stories. I remember WCCO doing a piece on you and getting a few other articles. Your family lineage goes back to Nigeria. You're a member of the Igbo tribe. You were born and raised here, but just growing up, what was your interest? What got you hooked on sports, particularly basketball?
Yeah, so Nigerians are really big on soccer. I think you and I have had this conversation before. And so, my grandparents, my parents were always wanting me to be a soccer gal. And I did give it a try, just to please them, scored for the other team, figured out that soccer was not for me. So I think I got into basketball. I went to the YMCA with my dad one day, and I just picked up a basketball and started playing. And I was like, hey, I like this. And so I stuck with it. I was always tall, so everyone's like, oh, you should play basketball. Yeah. So that's what I did, and ended up playing for 17 years. So it's my favorite sport. Soccer was not for me, but basketball is definitely it.
You scored an own goal in soccer.
I did, but in my defense, I think I was 5 or 6. So, it's a little bit more pardonable at that age.
I was going to say, if I remember correctly, your father played professionally in soccer or had some
Not
experience with it.
professionally.
Okay.
Not professionally, no. He was really good, but he not professionally, no.
Okay. The reason I ask is that what did he have to say when you go out there at 5 or 6 years old and you scored own goal years after he polished his game?
It's probably just one of those things where it's like kids are going to be kids. I remember vividly this goal that I scored because I remember thinking, like, why isn't anybody stopping me? Like, this seems a little bit too easy, and it's because I was about to score for the other team. So
did that ever happen as a basketball player?
no, it did not. I don't think I would have ever been able to live it down if that happened as a basketball player. But I have seen it happen, just not to me, thankfully.
Well, it's good because you scored a lot of points, and it is a good thing that they all were for your team, not the other team. But something else I wanted to explore in Nigerian culture, and I'm not an expert, I'm still learning. I think I'll never stop learning, but yourself and a lot of others who have lineage with Nigerian ancestry, your names often have meanings in their native language, if I'm correct. And as I'm looking it up, your name, your full name, Onyekishi, stands for who is greater than God. What goes into that as far as giving names that have duplicate meanings, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's just something that's very big with African culture in general. Obviously, some people still have English names, but I think especially for those of us that are part of the diaspora, so first generation, second generation immigrants, things like that, I think having those traditional names is a way of keeping the culture alive and the heritage. So I think that's really, really cool. I always appreciate it when I see other Nigerians, other Africans with traditional names.
And while we're on this subject, a long history in athletics, you mentioned they're big into soccer, but we've seen a lot of athletes. I know when you were growing up as a high school player, that's when the Agumake's were making a name for themselves at Stanford. And then their two younger sisters, Olivia and Erica, both Division I athletes. And going back, this might be before your time, but with the pandemic, I've been binge watching a lot of classic TV and film, because and especially today, since we're stuck at home in a blizzard. And if you remember this show called American Gladiators, one of their top contenders, Peggy Odita, but her given name was Chinyeri, also a Stanford graduate. So
awesome.
I remember when the Agumake's, Neka and Shanae were coming up and making a name for themselves at Stanford, they spoke of how the conventional wisdom had people of Nigerian backgrounds like yourself in the medical field, or they had this box, this preconceived notion. But you and the Agumake's and all these other athletes that I've met, whether it's track, basketball, you name it, just a reminder that, hey, they can play sports too and do really well at it. You are certainly an example of that. So how do you think your presence helps illustrate this idea that you can do anything if you know where I'm getting at?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that my parents and grandparents instilled in me from the get-go was education is number one, especially as a woman of color. You have to have an education to thrive, to be successful in life. So that has always been the priority. However, that's not to say that things like athletics, arts, things like that cannot also be incorporated into life. So for me personally, basketball, I loved basketball with my whole heart, very, very passionate about it. But I never really planned on playing past college. It was more so, hey, I love this game. I'm going to give it my all and, get college paid for, have a great time, make great memories, and then set myself up well for my future in medicine. So I think, education is definitely should be priority for most people, in my opinion. And I mean, there are some people that end up not having to, go to school for different reasons, whether it's that they choose to open their own business or things like that. But yeah, you can definitely do anything that you put your mind to. For me personally, medicine has always been the ultimate goal. So that's what I focused on personally.
As you were making your way through basketball, you talked about how you preferred that sport over soccer. What was it about basketball that got you hooked on the sport, and what did you enjoy about it as you were making your way through the ranks, through the traveling leagues, up through Maranatha, and so on?
That is a great question. Um, I think for one, the fact that basketball is indoors, I do not like the outdoors very much. I hate bugs. And soccer, when you're outdoors, there's lots of bugs. So that was probably what helped me stick with it. But I also I like the pace of basketball a lot better than soccer, because with soccer, don't get me wrong, it's very, very interesting to watch, but it's like your final score is going to be like 4-0 or 6-2. It's not high scoring and fast paced. And I think that's what I liked about basketball the most, probably, is the pace of the game. It's a team effort, and yeah, it's a team effort, but there's also ways that you can shine as an individual as well. So I think that's what I liked about it.
It brings back a quote I remember reading from a fellow 2013 graduate, fellow Division I athlete, and Jessica January. She tried out soccer as well, and I remember her quote. It was for a blog she was doing, saying the idea of running around on a field for a scoreless draw didn't excite her all that much.
Yeah, that really is what it is. Because I mean, you could work your butt off for like, I don't remember how long soccer games are, but it's not short. And then you just to tie at the end, like, come on now, it's not. And there's a lot of running involved. There's a lot of running involved in basketball as well. But I think the fact that it's like a smaller space makes it bearable. But this big soccer field, I could not do it. No.
It's 80 minutes in high school, 90 in the pros, and
Okay.
I've become a bigger soccer fan over the years. And I will give you that a scoreless draw, I've covered some scoreless draws at the high school level, and it can be tough because usually you're by yourself and you have to vamp and ad lib and you're just trying to come up with something. But what I do enjoy most about it, I've gone to some United games and I've watched the World Cup, both the men and women, especially in a close game, whether it's a scoreless draw that's settled in penalty kicks or a 1-1, 2-1, what have you. You never know when a moment could be the moment. In basketball, I love the sport. It's my favorite to cover, but you kind of know the first half is the appetizer. The second half is usually the make or break. Not always, but with basketball, it takes a little bit of time to get that payoff if there is one. With soccer, you never know if a goal scored in the first 10 minutes could make the difference, or, well, United fans won't like me mentioning this. The opposing team, I think the Seattle scored 3 goals in the last 15 minutes of their semifinal and advanced to the MLS Cup final this year after United had a 2-0 lead. But you're
Yeah,
right.
I
It's a
agree with that. It is very fun to watch. I actually had the chance to go to a United game last year as well, and it's fun to watch, don't get me wrong. But for me personally, as an athlete, I don't think I would enjoy playing.
And before soccer fans come after me, it's the Seattle Sounders. I knew it was on the tip of my tongue. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Something else, we spoke of this when you and I did a game together, but it's something I think my audience would appreciate hearing as well. You mentioned how you were a tall figure growing up all the way through high school. And so folks were like, oh, you should play basketball. I'm sure you heard that more than once before you got into basketball. But how did you come about accepting that identity? I remember you telling me it took a while to grow comfortable with being 6'1" and usually the tallest in your class. What was that journey like?
Um, I think it definitely was a journey, I'll say that. Um, and I think it was just like you said, always being the tallest person in the room, like even from kindergarten. Like I was close to my kindergarten teacher's height in kindergarten. So um I think just feeling like, oh, I kind of wish I would like fit in more height wise. But I think when I really came to accept it was when I realized God made me the way that I am for a reason. God made me to stand out for a reason. And my height has allowed me to thrive in things like basketball. So I think just accepting that God has made you the way you are for a purpose, and there's no need for you to want to have to blend in or fit in with other people.
Although there was a moment where you told your high school coach that you wanted to be listed as 5'12" and not 6 feet, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that did happen. I think that was in seventh grade.
In seventh grade. And then, well, I guess the nice thing is once you get older, some of the others catch up to you and maybe you don't feel so
Yeah,
towering anymore.
for the
Or
most part.
I was going to say, for me, I'm 5'11", but covering the WNBA was a big help. And I was used to it to an extent because I had started covering the high school game a couple of years before I started covering the WNBA. And so in that league, the college game, and even a high school game, you get used to not being the tallest person on the floor real quick.
Right.
And there are some times where I've had to coax guests when I do post game interviews because they don't want to look taller than me or they don't want to make me look short. And I'm like, oh, come on. That's like, no,
Yeah.
let's meet eye level. I don't care if I look short. I've interviewed Brittany
Right.
Griner. I've interviewed Candace Parker, Sylvia Fowles.
Yeah.
So I'm used to looking up and I
Right.
don't think much of it. But I have seen a couple of cases where I've been around females taller than I am, and they get some of those remarks. I don't know if that's something you've dealt with, but for me, it's like there's more to
Yeah.
who they are than being 6 foot plus.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it comes with embracing everything about yourself and learning to love it. People say all the time, oh, you're 6 foot. Why do you need to wear heels? Because I want to wear. I'm not 6 foot. I think I'm like 6'2" actually. Because I want to wear heels. There's nothing wrong with it. So it's really, really, really important to embrace everything about yourself. And in my case, my height. Even though it took me a while, I've learned to love it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
So when did you settle on Maranatha? I know it's a K through 12, so I'm not sure when you enrolled at the school, but you were involved with the program for a long time. What led you to go to Maranatha and focus on your high school and athletic endeavors there?
So I actually started at Maranatha in sixth grade. My mom made the decision to enroll me there. We'd gone to church at Living Word Christian Center, which is attached to Maranatha, basically my entire life since I was in diapers. So we had a sense of community at Living Word, knew that it was a great great institution as far as education. And that's really when we made the move. It wasn't really, because I know a lot of people transfer to Maranatha. I don't know if they do it these days, but when I was in high school, a lot of people transferred like in ninth grade so that they could play. But it never really was that for me. It was just, again, like I said, education is really big in my family. And my mom knew that it would be a great opportunity for me. And I just happened to, join the basketball team and we were good. So
Do you remember, I'm guessing you suited up in 7th grade because you can't play in 6th grade, but do you remember the first time you were called up to play in a varsity game?
I don't remember it specifically. I know I did get a little bit of varsity time in 7th grade, but I don't remember my first time going in playing varsity.
Probably because you didn't do anything like scoring the other team's goal.
Which is good. Like I said, I would never live that down if that happened.
So your first game was probably just a pedestrian effort, but I've seen this past year, I saw a few 7th graders, including one who ended up starting for Maranatha as they worked to rebuild their ranks. But as you made your way up, at the time, Maranatha hadn't won a state championship yet. You would get that opportunity as a sophomore, but as you were getting older and started listing yourself as 6'1", 6'2", and not 5'12" and 13, what do you think contributed to Maranatha's success in girls basketball as a Class A school? And when did you sense that you would have an opportunity to make a statement like you did?
Um, I would say probably ninth grade is when I really realized, like, hey, like we have a lot of potential to do some great things in not only Class A, but just Minnesota basketball in general. My freshman year, we went to the state tournament. However, we lost to Northern Freeze in the first round of the tournament. I'll never forget that. I'm still a little salty to this day because I don't think we should have lost. But that was really when I realized that we had a lot of potential. As far as the success of the program, I think definitely the fact that we were very, very faith-based. We incorporated our faith into just about every part of basketball. And the fact that we did have some great athletes. We had athletes that played year round. So having players that were dedicated also definitely contributed to our success.
And you brought something up that I wanted to touch on. You already had some familiarity at Living Word. I've always found it to be an amusing contrast, this giant church encompassing a small private school. But how do you think your education background going to a private school, Maranatha, I can't recall if they have a specific denomination, but as you said, they have a faith-based curriculum. How do you think that shaped you into the person you are as an athlete and now as a future PA or whatever you end up doing in the
Yep.
field of medicine?
Future PA. Yep. So I think it definitely helped mold me into the person that I am today because it taught me that faith isn't just something that you say for Sunday mornings. It's something that you can incorporate into every part of your life, whether it's academics, basketball, personal life, relationships. So I think that's the biggest way in which attending a faith-based high school and being brought up in that environment helped me.
So you mentioned losing in the quarterfinal round your freshman year at the state tournament. The following year, different story. What did you notice was different from your freshman to sophomore season, and what did you make of that ride that led you to the first of your state tournament titles?
That's a good question. Um, I think even though we lost in the first round of the tournament my freshman year, I think having that experience going into the state tournament sophomore year really, really helped. And I think the fact that we made it to the state tournament my freshman year kind of fired girls up to work harder and kind of let them know, hey, we have potential to do something really great.
And for those who maybe don't follow small school ball, what is that tournament like? I've often said Class A is the most unpredictable because naturally we follow the bigger schools. Hopkins, of course, got a lot of publicity the last couple of years with Paige Beckers, but several others in the big schools also get a lot of headlines and news features, what have you. Class A is a little different. You're a metro school, one of the few Class A metro schools. Usually it's teams outside the state. So geography vastly different compared to the larger schools. But what would you make of that experience playing small school ball and picking up a lot of miles along the way with some of those road trips you would do?
Yeah. So it was definitely an experience when it came to the state tournament because, like you said, it's very, very unpredictable. Um, but I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have changed it for anything because it really, really helped me because we got to play the bigger schools outside of conference season, so it's definitely an experience. All the, well, now that COVID is a thing, it's probably state tournaments probably aren't going to be the same, but it seemed like every small school in that tournament packed up their whole town and trucked down to Target Center, and so it was always a very, very what's the word? I guess exciting environment to play in because you had these teams with all their fans and we had our fans from Maranatha and Living Word and everything. So it was a good experience.
That being said, what was the adjustment process like going from this small school, small gym? I've covered some games at Maranatha. They only have one set of bleachers and the benches are right up along the wall to Williams Arena. And then your sophomore season, you get past Minnesota, and then your first game at the Target Center, a double overtime thriller against Hancock
And
in the
Hancock,
semifinal.
Hancock, I remember that. That was probably, I played Division I basketball in college as well, but that was probably one of my most memorable games. But it was definitely different. I remember we played a lot of the bigger schools away. So we kind of had that experience of being in a bigger gym, more fans, that type of a thing. Um, but I remember one thing that my coach would always emphasize was like especially at Williams Arena, the depth perception is different because when you're playing at Maranatha, and like you said, it's a small gym, you have the backboard and then it's a wall, but depth perception in Williams Arena, you have these sets of seats and bleachers and everything. So he always used to emphasize that our guards needed to kind of adjust to that and keep that in mind. It didn't really affect me that much because, I wasn't out on the perimeter throwing up threes. But yeah, that was one thing that I remember that he emphasized.
In fact, I believe you attempted in college, at least, only one 3-pointer.
Yeah. I don't even remember that three. I don't know if it was an error, but I honestly don't remember.
It didn't go in, at least when I looked at your career stat line. It did not go in. So if it did, you might have remembered it. But as you said, you played mostly in the paint, low post, grab rebounds, and you did that really well. In this era of stretch fours, which was coming into focus around the time you were in high school, and we were seeing Candace Parker and Nneka and Elena Deladon play deeper and play more of a guard's position, you decided to stay down low, focus on the paint, be the rim protector. What led you to that area of the basketball court?
Well, it wasn't really my decision. And I think you and I chatted about this when I called the Maranatha game with you last year. My coach basically made that decision for me. And I will say, part of me is thankful for that because it allowed me to really, really work on the things that I was good at and cultivate them and whatnot. But part of me also wishes that I would have, maybe in seventh, eighth grades, started to explore, like, stretch forward, see what that would look like for me, work on shooting threes, ball handling, stuff like that, because it could have changed things. But I think the main reason why my coach kept me inside for most of the time was that there were not very many girls in class A that were my size, that were as strong as me, or able to do what I did defensively, rebound wise, offensively down low. So I think he just wanted to take advantage of that, and which was great. It was great for us, and it helped me in college as well.
It did, and I'll get to that shortly, but wanted to go back to that first state championship run, the double overtime game. You have vivid memories of that battle with Hancock. What do you remember from that game? How nervous were you that you had to sweat it out in 2 extra sessions for the right to play in the championship?
Yeah. I remember I was in foul trouble most of that game. That's what I do remember. And how we actually got into the first overtime was on like a last second shot. Basically, my teammate, I don't remember. I think either she dribbled it up the floor or someone else dribbled it and passed it to her. And she passed it to me, and I made the layup with like 1 second left, time running out. And so that's how we ended up in the first overtime. So I remember that vividly, but I don't really remember much other than being in foul trouble, which I was in foul trouble a lot playing in Class A. I think the refs just picked on me because there wasn't really anybody my size. But yeah, I do remember that.
Hey, at least you got the bucket in crunch time to keep your state tournament championship hopes alive. If you hadn't, who knows?
Yeah.
The next day, of course, with the Class A tournament, it's 3 games in 3 days, which is quite the grind. But again, they set it up that way with most of the schools having to travel. You don't have to worry about that so much. But the next day, you play Nicollet, Loyola, the co-op, and didn't need overtime in that one, but you finished on top, won your first state championship. What do you remember, and how excited were you that you got to play an integral part of history, being a member of the first team to win a state championship in girls basketball?
Oh, it was awesome. It was so um, exhilarating. Like, I remember when we won, we were just so thankful to God, because our season was not the prettiest that year. But I think all the experience that we gained throughout the season really helped us when it came to crunch time with those final games. So we were just so happy.
Well, then fast forward a year later, you improve on your record. You were 23-9, but you got the title. And if you win the last game of the season, throw those losses out the window, something I've learned covering all 4 Lynx championships.
Right.
But the following year, 28-5, and even the games you lost, you played well. So it wasn't like Maranatha was getting blown out or that they didn't deserve to be there. Not that I ever think that about any school that makes its way through the tournament, but
Right.
what do you remember that following season? You were a walking double-double, and you won your second straight title and did it against one of your longtime rivals in Mountain Iron Buell, who I don't think you played that year in the regular season, but you faced off against them in the final
Hmm.
and did it again.
We did. I think the overall theme for my junior year was, we know we were good. We knew we were good. And we weren't just going to be satisfied with making it to state. We wanted to win it. We knew that we had the potential to win it. And that's what we worked toward the entire season.
What was different? What was the same? And overall, what do you enjoy most about being part of a repeat bid?
I think things that were the same. Work ethic. We were always, taught to work hard, and we did. And incorporating our faith into basketball. Um, I think one thing that was different the second year is that confidence that we had, having won the state title the year before. So I think that was really big for us because we knew that we had done it before and we could do it again.
In either of those state tournament runs, when you won the title, and by that point you were a household name, I think, at Maranatha. Did anyone ask you for an autograph? Any kind of requests, photo ops, things like that?
Definitely lots of photo ops. Autographs, probably a couple, but definitely a lot of photo ops.
So what was it like being a celebrity at this small school? And I'm sure word got to the rest of the Living Word congregation. What was
Mhm.
that like for you at such a young age?
It was cool. It was cool. I got to meet a lot of really great people and build a lot of great relationships through that opportunity. Um, so it was definitely a blessing.
Then senior year rolls around, you were the top seed going in, and I think it wasn't until the following year where they seeded the A and 2A tournaments. But even though it didn't have the ending you wanted, what do you remember most from that senior season where you got to finish as one of the top scorers and rebounders in school history? You picked up a lot of awards. You were invited to the Coaches Association All-Star Series. You won the Athena Award. So your impact, even if you didn't get to win another state title and make it 3 in a row, your impact was noticed, to say the least.
Yeah. Um, like you said, senior season did not end the way that we had envisioned. We were definitely going for that three-peat. But I don't think that there was ever a time, even though the season was not what we expected it to be, I don't think we ever gave up hope or gave up on ourselves. We just kept working hard the entire season. And that's one thing that I remember, and that's one thing that I carried with me into college basketball. We definitely had some seasons when I was at Missouri State where, we could have just given up, but we didn't. So being able to carry that over from my senior year of high school to college really helped me.
And one of those historical footnotes, unless something happened since then, I looked at some of those numbers from your senior season. You had a section game in the first round where you scored 126 points.
Yeah.
Now, we should
Sounds
make it.
about right.
That was like learning for leadership. We should point out, too, those first, second round, especially first round games in sections. There's only so much you can do where there's a huge difference between the top seed and the lower seeds in the bracket. But
Right.
I'm not sure if they've ever matched that. I covered a Maranatha game where they scored over 100 against Como Park when Andrea Adams was making her way through, and the Jarnets and Lexi Lee were the big names for Maranatha. But 126.
Yeah. That was in 2009, 2010 season?
That was your senior season.
Oh, it was my senior season?
First round
Oh.
section game, learning for leadership. You had 17 points, 126 overall.
Oh, wow. Yeah, like you said, sometimes with the seeding, one seed, 10 seed, it just is what it is. And I know when we used to get up on teams, my coach would put the JV in, and I think if I remember correctly, JV probably played a big portion of that game and still got up to the 126. So
I'm just saying, like, that's something. I'm not sure if anyone's ever matched that. It's really hard to get that high
yeah.
at the high school level. So you talked about wanting to continue playing in college, and you did at Missouri State. How many offers did you get? When did you get that first offer, and what led you to head to Springfield?
So I got quite a few offers. Um and I'd say I got a majority of my offers after my junior season. Yeah, my junior season. So I remember I had all my official visits set. I think 5 was the maximum at that time. I don't remember. I think it was, I don't know. But I had 5 official visits set, and I took my first official visit to Missouri State, and I just fell in love with Springfield, with the facilities, with the team, with the fans, and I decided that that's where I wanted to spend the next 4 years.
At Missouri State, your grand total in career points was 95. But owing to what you said earlier about being a rim protector, you did get 63 blocks and had some nice games as a blocker. What do you make of your career, even if you didn't score a lot, uh, but you got a chance to make an impact, especially your last 2 seasons? I think you got to
Mhm.
play in an NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So it's something where you go from being the big name on campus at Maranatha to a role player, more a contributor off the bench. But
Mhm.
from what I can tell, you enjoyed every minute of it.
I did. Um, it definitely was a transition. I think it's a transition for anyone going from high school to college. Um, but again, I just focused more so on the things that I was really, really, really good at, which were defense. You know, I could guard bigger guards, I could guard big post players. So my coach really, really had me focus on those areas. And I was a go to player as far as when there's key players that need to be focused on, I was put in, you know. And I also, again, was good at rebounding. And I just overall, like you said, more of a role player, but I completely bought into that role. Ended up leading the team in charges taken, which was really, really big. I didn't really learn to take charges the right way until I got to college. And once I learned to take them, I took a lot of them. So yeah, just really focused on what I was good at and went from there.
What goes into taking a charge properly? Because I've met some players who are reluctant because if you're going to go out there and put yourself on the line like that, you're going to take some hits,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
a few bruises, floor burns, what have you. But that didn't stop you from being a lockdown defender. What goes into taking a charge and making sure that the call goes your way?
So I played for Kelly Harper, who is now the head coach at Tennessee. She played for Pat Summitt. Really, really coached us under her same Pat Summitt same principles. And I remember we had the take a charge drill where the coaches would basically stand there, take the charge, and tell us if we took, or they would teach us how to take a charge the right way and tell us if we did it right. So I think the biggest things that they had us focus on, if I remember correctly, were having your feet set, staying out of the, what is that? Like the arc, the area.
The
You would know
restricted
better.
zone.
The restricted zone. I can't think clearly basketball wise these days. But yeah, staying outside of the restricted zone and having your feet set, and we had to be dramatic about it too. So we had to make the side of, or sound effects. I remember those were the 3 big things, and I learned to be quite the actress when it came to charge taking. I think that's why I was able to get so many of the calls.
Have you thought about a second career or a side gig as an actress since you can sell charge calls?
No, definitely not. I don't think it would transition very well into film. It was just good on the basketball court.
I don't know. You might be surprised.
You never know.
But
Maybe down the line.
I do agree with that. And as much as we like to give flack or give people who flop a hard time, I'm going, well, hey, the officials only have a split second to make a decision. So of course, when you're out there, you're going to try to sell it.
Oh yeah.
And especially if it's a legitimate charge, like, hey, this woman hit me.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
sad. So there is an element of theatrics. I do think some take it over the top with the flopping, but at the same
Oh yeah.
time, hey, you're trying to sell it, and it's not like you
Yeah.
can go back and review it.
And I wouldn't say it was so much theatrics as it was like making it sound like you got hit, which we did get hit. We took those charges fair and square, but it's just making sure that the ref knows that, hey, I took this charge.
And then looking back on that career at Missouri State, you still have fond memories and fond attachments. I remember you went to the Missouri State Minnesota game last season that the Lady Bears won. And how about their program there? One of the
Mm-hmm.
top tier mid majors. You got to play a
Yeah.
part in that. What do you remember most, and how do you think that helped shape you going to a mid major school? I think you were the lone Minnesotan on that roster, but as you
Yeah.
said, focused on
I was for the first 2 years, and then Danielle
gets it.
um,
I remember now.
yeah, she came up my junior year. She was 2 years behind me. Yeah, I think it was a very, very good experience. And again, it was kind of the same storyline, if you will, as far as, when I was in undergrad, class A, people don't really think of class A as like competitive or, anything special. And we were able to show that we could play with the bigger schools and we could win state titles. I think it was very similar with mid majors. A lot of mid majors are making progress these days relative to back in the day, but you know we were able to show that we could make it to the tournament, we could win valley titles and things like that.
I do wonder how your high school career would have gone if you were taught to take charges properly. You spoke of being in foul trouble a lot. Who knows if you were able to get yourself in there?
I think taking charges was more, I blocked a lot of shots in high school, and I think that was better for high school, but blocking shots is not as easy in college as it is high school. So I remember when I first got to Missouri State, my coaches would be so mad at me because I would just try to block everything, and it's like 9 times out of 10 that's going to be a foul. Whereas if you take a charge to turn over on the other team, you get the ball back. So I think once I kind of got that mentality into my head, that's when I really was sold on taking charges instead of trying to block shots. I still did block quite a few shots at Missouri State, but I mean, definitely focused on taking charges.
63 to be precise, and that was good for 11 in school history. So even though you played limited minutes, who knows if you were a starter? I think you would have had a few more blocks. But the point being, like you said, Class A ball, that small school ball, mid majors, I've noticed that the pace is a little faster at the higher levels, but that doesn't mean you can't go out there and play. And you spoke of the difference in blocking. In high school, you were often the tallest out there, especially in the Class A field. At the college level, just about everybody, especially those who work the post, are as tall as you, if not taller.
Right. And that's kind of where the shift came, where, I'm not tall enough to just block everybody's shot. I have to find another way to make an impact defensively.
Now, there's something I wanted to explore. A few things, actually. Looking back on your career, because your time as an athlete ended when you graduated, although I heard you were still a mean blocking and charging machine for the beta blockers, that
I
that
was.
rec team. Well, and who
Yeah.
knows, when it's safe to play games again, maybe you'll be able to rejoin them at Missouri State or form your own beta blockers group up here
Yeah.
or elsewhere when you get into the
Who
field of
knows?
medicine.
Yeah.
Uh, but throughout your time as an athlete, what would you say was the most exciting moment and the most embarrassing moment?
Um, Most exciting moment. was my junior season at Missouri State when we beat Drake in was it the second game of the conference tournament? Yeah. We beat Drake in the second game of the conference tournament. And I think if I remember correctly, with like 30 or 40 seconds left, I was at the free throw line. We were down either 1 or 2. I think we were down 1. And I made 1 of 2, so I tied the game. And then we ended up winning. I don't remember how we won, but that was definitely the most exciting moment of my career as an athlete, because we had lost to Drake twice that season by a lot. And I think they were supposed to win the tournament that year, and we ended up winning the tournament and then going to the NCAA tournament. So that was definitely the most exciting moment. Most embarrassing moment, I think, I think it was my junior year of high school. We were playing in the state tournament, state championship game at Target Center. And I remember I had taken NyQuil the night before because I was feeling sick. And I don't think the NyQuil had worn off by the next day. And I was at the free throw line shooting a free throw, and I dribbled the ball off my foot. And then I stepped into the lane to get it. And then the refs kind of looked at themselves and they were like, did that really just happen? They're like, all right, like, can't do that. So yeah, so that was a turnover. I didn't get to shoot my free throw, and I blame it on the NyQuil. I don't think I would have done that if NyQuil wasn't involved.
You still won the game, and that's what matters. But I'm sure you heard a few quips or a few one-liners about dribbling it, dribbling it off your foot. Well, and how often do we see that in basketball? Even the pros, 99 times out of 100, you could have a proper sense of spacing and awareness, but with so much movement going on, lateral movement, what have you, like you said, basketball is a fast-paced sport. Sometimes you forget where the ball and your feet are.
Yeah, that happened.
That did. Another thing I wanted to explore with you, since your high school days are a few years ago, you might remember this little publication here, the breakdown.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, that didn't turn out well. I disappeared into our snowy abyss, but so the breakdown, it's a publication that I've used the last couple of years, especially since coaches, it's not like college or the pros where they just have one job. Most coaches have day jobs or they work at the school. So It's a way to help me learn something about the players and the teams when I can't always get in touch with the coaches. But what I enjoy about it are the little autobiographical nuggets that the players drop, and you dropped a few, and I wanted to see if they still hold up.
Okay, I don't remember what I said, so we'll see.
Well, in that publication, it was your senior year. You said that one of your hobbies was playing the piano.
Yes.
Is that something you still like to do?
Yes. I do still play the piano for fun. I do.
What are some of your favorite songs to play? Because I remember an audition video you put together where you were strumming the tunes or the notes to Coldplay's Clocks.
Yeah, I think I posted a video on my Instagram at some point of me doing that. Yeah, I do like playing clocks. I like playing, what else do I like playing? I think it just depends on the mood that I'm in, really. I don't have a specific favorite per se.
How long have you been playing the piano?
So I took lessons pretty much all through elementary school, if I remember correctly, probably kindergarten to 6th or 7th, I guess even into middle school, 6th or 7th grade. Yeah. So I played for a while.
That gives you something or another thing in common with Neko Gumake. I know that's something she took up when she was young and made her way up through the ranks of sports. Another fun fact from then that I'm wondering still holds up now. Back then, you said your favorite food was watermelon.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite food now. Definitely my favorite fruit. But favorite food, no. I wouldn't say so.
So what took over the top spot for favorite food?
Oh man. I don't even know that I can choose at this point. I eat really healthy now, but like when I'm not eating healthy, either Nigerian food of some sort or Mexican food.
What are some of your favorite or go-to Nigerian dishes? Because I remember I've had some, at a pageant you and I were at, but I also worked the Festival of Nations, and I think there's a Nigerian cafe that offers a few samples or glimpses of some of their food. So what are some of the Nigerian dishes you like to indulge in?
I would say some of my favorites are jollof rice. So we have jollof rice, which is cooked with white rice. You can put different seasonings and tomatoes and meats, whatever in it. So jollof rice for sure. I like this soup called egusi soup. It's made with like a melon seed, and you can put different leafy greens into it. I like to cook mine with spinach. Yeah, and then it's usually eaten with either fufu, which is like a dough. I don't know if dough is the right. It's kind of doughy. I don't know how to explain it. But you can either eat it with that or you can eat it with rice. So I enjoy that. I also enjoy just basic Nigerian rice and stew. I'm just listing off things. I'm a foodie. I don't know if you can tell, but yeah. So those, let's just keep it at those, because I could be here all day if I started listing out the foods that I love.
Same with me, because if it's a food, for the most part, I'll eat it. I'm not brave enough to go into the more exotic cuisine. So like, I know some folks will, one of my friends is in Arizona right now, and they sell like packaged crickets. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go that far yet, but
no, not me.
But Festival of Nations, I love it because I get to sample all these different foods from around the world, and the state fair is the same way.
Yeah.
And then I know this is not specific to Nigeria, but I've got a soft spot for plantains.
Oh, we eat a lot of those.
Hard to go wrong with that, but I'll eat bananas straight up too, because I try to behave myself. It's actually hilarious that over the last year or so, I'm below my college weight.
Oh, wow. That's kind of impressive, actually, with this pandemic. That's kind of impressive.
Well, I find ways to stay active, go for walks, hit up the treadmill, and this watching what I eat too. I can't eat as much as I used to without feeling sick.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's a whole nother story for another podcast. You and I, maybe, you know what, next time we do a podcast, we should just go on about food and see how far we can go with it.
I'm game for that, for sure.
Or when it's safe to gather again, I think that would be fun too. Just do some sort of gathering. I could see it now. I'll just do a food series, and then you can school me on all the Nigerian dishes. I'm sure you and your mother and the rest of your family would would get a kick out of that.
Oh yeah, I would be willing to do that for sure.
There was another thing from that breakdown book. You said your nickname in those days was Big O. Is that still a thing?
So that was my nickname. I remember that. It's not my nickname anymore. My nickname is OG. My teammates,
OG.
my teammates in college, my teammates in college came up with that one. So I'm OG now. Went from Big O to OG. So.
Is that something you flaunt when you meet people? It's like, I'm the OG at Missouri State.
No. It's more so an inside joke between me and my former teammates. But
all right, I'll give you that, because I'm like, OG, but there isn't a G in your name.
No, there's not. But I'm the OG, Mike. I'm the OG.
You are, well, you were certainly one of the OGs at Maranatha, so I'm not going to argue with that. Something else I wanted to discuss with you. You're the oldest of three siblings, as I understand it.
Mhm,
The Missouri State bio that's still listed on the website
mhm,
mentions that. And I've seen some photos. So you spoke of the importance of being a strong athlete and a stellar student, which you did with the Athena Award, which I believe honors both academics and athletics in high school, and then making the Missouri Valley Conference Honor Roll every year you were a player.
mhm.
How do you think your role as a student athlete, with everything you accomplished in both those realms, how do you think that helped you become a role model, not just for your brother and sister, but for other athletes who came behind you at Maranatha Christian Academy, other athletes who came behind you at Missouri State and elsewhere? What do you think your journey illustrates about being a good role model?
I think definitely shows that work ethic is very, very important. You need to be willing to put in the hard work to get your desired results. So whether that's getting A's, for me, I've never been the kind of person that just can cram before a night before the test and just ace everything. I've always had to be the type of person that plans out like, okay, this is what I'm going to study for this. I'm going to put X amount of hours into this. I'm going to start studying the week before, space things out. So, really being willing and coming up with a solid plan to put in the work. So, in the classroom, for me, that looked like juggling, as far as college, juggling, okay, I'm in class from, let's say, 9 to 1, and then I'm in practice from 2 to 4, and then I have weights and I have conditioning, and being able to figure out, okay, this is when I'm going to study, and this is when I'm going to do laundry, um, do everything else. So, work ethic, time management skills, yeah, I'd say those are the biggest two things that have played into me getting to where I'm at. And I think play into me serving as a role model for um, my younger siblings, upcoming athletes from, high school, other high school athletes, college athletes, things like that. And I still use those skills because PA school, I'll tell you what, PA school is hard. Not even gonna lie, it's very, very hard. It's essentially trying to cram 4 years of medical school curriculum into two. Um, and I've been able to apply those skills and they've helped me immensely. So that's been big.
How old are your brother and sister?
9 and 8, 8 and 9. Yeah.
And as they've learned more about you, because I'm guessing they were a little too young to remember firsthand your state championships way back when, but as they've learned more about you and what you achieved as an athlete and as a student, what have they said? Have they said anything that sticks out, or any moments or conversations, stories that resonate with you?
Um, I just can tell that they look up to me a lot. So I always try my best to be, the best role model that I can be. And also, I try to lead by example, if you will. So I know that they're always looking up to me, always say how proud they are of me. Um, and so I just try to live up to that and help them in any way that I can.
Well said. Are those two going to be a pair of athletes I'll have to keep an eye out for in a few years' time? Am I going to be
I think
hearing about
so.
them?
I think so. I think my brother will definitely be working on basketball. My little sister, she's more of a dance gal. She tried basketball for a while, but she's more so into dance. But my brother, yeah, I think he's gonna take after me and pursue basketball.
Well, that'll give me a few years to make sure I have your surname pronounced correctly. I never forget, and I know we've talked about this many times, but the first time I interviewed you, the first time I knew who you were after your second state title, I was working on the name and I was listening to the PA announcer at Target Center because it sounded like he wanted to be sure he got all the names right. And then at the end, I just could not say it. And I think for me, because of the syllables, how it's pronounced, you have several consonants and vowels that go on top of each other. And then the following year, I got tongue tied again at the All Star Series, and I'm going, why can't I say her name right?
You're not the first one.
No, I think you told me the PA announcer at Missouri State never got it right. And
Yeah.
how many tries on average does it take for friends, people who aren't in your family? How many attempts on average does it take to get your name right?
It takes a lot. It takes many, many attempts for most people. But I just tell people the easy way to remember it is M&M like the candy. Osemenam. Osemenam. There you go. It's not that hard if you think about it that way. So
And that's why when I can, I like to ask the coaches how you pronounce names. And usually, if they
right.
don't know, they'll ask the players themselves because I want to make sure the names are right. And sometimes you might come across a name that looks like it rolls off the tongue, but it's pronounced differently. So no matter what, I
Right.
always like to check. But to this day, you were the first and still the only person who has the name you do. So you still share that honor. And I remembered what I was going to bring up. You didn't mention this in the breakdown book, but I learned this about you through one of our many conversations. You memorized the entire theme song to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, if I remember correctly.
Did I?
It happened, well, it was a few years ago when
West Philadelphia, born and raised. I'm afraid. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I guess you still do because Will Smith appeared on the Graham Norton show, and Graham Norton mentioned how even outside his native country, it was a huge show in the UK. And he said, it's a song I happen to know everyone knows. And so they broke out in it. And of course, the audience starts singing along and Will Smith joins them. It was a cool moment. And I
Yeah.
forget something you had said, but you know me, I don't like to take things seriously. I kind of wish I was Deadpool in another dimension. Maybe not as violent as he is, but that's kind of my style. I like to have fun because
Yeah.
I like to make people laugh and give them something positive when there's so much
Right.
negativity. But I just remember sending you a link to that clip and saying that a lot of British TV viewers out there know the song, and then you said I do too, and I'm going, that
Yeah.
was one of your shows. I mean, that came out before you
Oh
were
yeah.
born.
It did. It did. But I still watch that to this day. And I do have the full lyrics memorized. It's a very catchy tune.
It is, and still a pop culture icon that has a lot of steam. But is that something like when folks come up to you? Because I've always found it amusing when I meet athletes and you're among them and they're into artists or TV shows or films that were released well before they were born. And there are some folks out there who like to give a hard time on the younger generations for not knowing the past, but it's like you give them an opportunity, they do. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering
A lot of people do.
what got you hooked on that show. What are some other favorites in your TV itinerary?
Ooh. So as far as what got me hooked on that show, I think it was just on TV. Like reruns were on TV when I was growing up, and I really, really liked it and just kept watching it. Um, as far as favorites now, I watch a lot of like Nigerian shows. So I would say those are probably my favorites. But I'm a diehard Grey's Anatomy fan. So I guess of the shows that most people know of, Grey's Anatomy is my go-to. I don't ever want it to end, ever. Everyone's like, this needs to be the last season. I'm like, no, 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 no. It needs to keep going. It got me through 4 years of cell and molecular biology in undergrad, and it's helping me get through PA school. So
I was going to say it's probably a show you can understand the references to. That's probably plays into your fandom of it. Not many
yeah,
shows can do that. I feel the same way about The Mandalorian. I think you've gotten to know me over the years, and I tell folks I'm into that pop culture, geeky fandom, Star Wars,
Yeah.
Star Trek, Doctor Who, the MCU. So The Mandalorian, I feel the same way. Like, man, I'm going to feel sad when it's over.
I'm gonna be so sad. Yeah, when Brave is over. Hopefully they have a couple more seasons for me. I hope.
Oh, I'm sure you'll find another show. But you mentioned Nigerian shows, and if I remember, you do speak the Igbo language
Igbo,
or
yep.
Igbo. Did I say that right?
Yeah, so it's Igbo, but
Igbo.
I guess you could say that the G is kind of silent depending on how you say it.
Well, you know what? Maybe I can get you and the Aguma case together, and then you all can school me on, because I think you're all part of that same tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
I do. Yep, I'm fluent in Igbo. I am.
so when you watch these Nigerian programs, I'm not sure how you do it. Do you have to watch with the subtitles, or are you able to follow along in native tongue? And I ask just because I have no knowledge how they produce these programs, but I find it fascinating.
So the ones that I watch are all in English because English is, I believe, the official language in Nigeria. So it's usually English and there's something that's called Pidgin English as well in Nigeria and other parts of West Africa, which I also speak and understand. Um, so it's not too hard for me to follow along with most shows. And the show, I actually do enjoy watching shows that are in Igbo without subtitles, like shows and movies that are in Igbo without subtitles, because it kind of forces me to use that part of my brain that typically doesn't have to process things. Like I'll have conversations with like my parents and my grandparents in Igbo all the time, but it's different than sitting down and watching a whole movie that's just all Igbo, because it really forces me to utilize part of my brain that I don't always use. So I enjoy that.
Well, if I ever get on your bad side, I guess you guys could speak in this tongue that I wouldn't be able to decipher. So all the more reason not to antagonize you or make you
Oh no, that would never happen, Mike.
ITs. But if I recall, Igbo, one of the many tribes in Nigeria, and as I understand it, every tribe has their own cultural observances and languages.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy most about the Igbo language, and how would you introduce it or summarize it to someone like myself who may not understand the different dialects and languages that are spoken in Nigerian culture?
That's a great question. Huh. I would say it's a very um tonal language, if that makes sense. So you could have I'm thinking of one word specifically. There's a word in Igbo that's spelled the same way, but depending on where you place the emphasis, different meanings. So the word is the same word for like cloth or clothing, egg, and to cry. So there are many words like that in the Igbo language where you have to be specific about where you're placing the emphasis. But other than that, I mean, I feel like it's a pretty easy language to learn. I feel like if someone was really, really dedicated to it, it wouldn't take them too much time to learn.
I spell a YouTube series that you could put together.
I could do that.
You could, being fluent in the language. And I
Yeah.
think what you were describing, Onyi, was a homonym. So if anyone was wondering, there are homonyms in the Igbo language and other languages as well, because as you said, this word, and I can't remember if you told me the word it is, but when you change the pronunciation, it changes the meaning.
Yeah. So it's aqua. So if you say it aqua, that means egg. Aqua means to cry. And aqua means like clothing or cloth material. Yeah. So then there's a lot of words like that.
What do you enjoy most about being a part of that culture? You told me how the Ogumake family also in your tribe? I don't know if you've ever met personally. I think you would.
I have not. So I
That
haven't
would be
met
a
them.
great day. It's like, how excited would you be if you ever got that chance, considering all they've done
Yeah,
in
that would be cool.
sports
I
and in
always love.
culture?
Yeah, that would be a really, really cool opportunity. But I think it was uh Chini. She goes by Chine.
Shanae,
Chinenya is her full name, I think,
Shanae,
if I remember
yep.
correctly.
I'm going to look it up because I can, and I have a monitor right next to me. We will confirm
Yeah.
this live to our audience. Chinenye, yes, Chinenye.
Chinenye. Yeah, Chinenye. So she called our game for the NCAA tournament when we played Texas A&M, but I never got to meet her because I mean, yeah, it was just I guess I was just focused on trying to win the game.
You have
But that was a good
priorities.
opportunity. Yeah.
You have priorities. Well, if you ever get the chance to meet, that would be a fun introductory story. Be like, hey,
That'd be
you call.
awesome. Yeah.
And I remember she brought a little of that Wakanda vibe, as she called it, during the All Star festivities in Minneapolis 2 years ago for the WNBA when Target Center hosted,
Yeah.
and got
Awesome.
to meet. I well, I've got to know the Ogumekes a little bit because I did a piece on NECA, and that's how I learned about her being a gymnast and a piano player. So
Mhm.
I think you would fit right in.
Yeah.
We should look into making that happen. And the youngest, Erica, is now a med student at. She graduated from Rice and now is a med student herself. So
Awesome.
I just think the connection is so natural. We gotta. That should be our mission.
That sounds good to
Find a way
me.
to connect Onyi with the Aguma case. um, but in all seriousness, what do you enjoy most about being a part of that culture and getting an opportunity to represent yourself, both as an American, you were born here, but also represent your history? I remember that pageant, and your parents told me they wanted to ensure that you would remember or have an integral piece of that culture with you no matter what.
Right.
It's something you're proud of owing to your fluency in English and Igbo, but also some of the other discussion points we've raised. What do you enjoy most about getting that opportunity to represent Nigeria the way you do, and more specifically, the Igbo tribe, the Igbo culture, all of that?
Man, I really, really, really think it's such a blessing to be able to be part of a tribe with such rich culture, whether it's the music, the food, the attire, everything. It's just very, very, very beautiful. So that's why I think the biggest way that I try to keep it alive is by speaking my language as much as I can, whether it's just in conversation with my family or other friends that are Igbo as well. So that's the biggest way that I try to keep it alive. I also, listen, I pretty much exclusively, I don't want to say exclusively, I listen to a lot of Igbo music, Nigerian music, and yeah, cook the food. So I think it's really, really cool that I know where I came from, and I know my roots because I know a lot of people don't always have that privilege. So being able to know where I come from and making sure that it's still incorporated into my everyday life is a blessing.
I will say this, you weren't the first person I've met with Nigerian ancestry. I had a close friend from high school who also hailed, or her parents, I should say, hailed from that country. And I've met other athletes who aren't afraid to showcase it. There was an athlete from Eden Prairie who displayed the flag on her Instagram profile. Something as simple as that. And again, getting to meet the Agumekes through my time as a WNBA beat writer and just in passing, it's something I'm proud any opportunity I get to enhance my experience to help me understand how big this world is. I appreciate, but I'll say this, one reason I enjoy this friendship with you is because yes, we come from different backgrounds, different territories, but we're not all that different either, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. I totally agree with that.
I know we've covered a lot of ground in this podcast, but is there anything else about yourself, your journey? And this can be anything, whether it was your time as an athlete, your time as a student in the field of medicine, just anything. What else would you like to add about your story, your journey, and how you got here?
Um, I would just say that like one of my goals with everything that I do is to inspire and encourage other people that are thinking of following in my footsteps, whether that's, being a Division 1 athlete or trying to pursue a career in medicine to any capacity. Um, and to those people, if I could give them one word of advice, and again, we've talked about this already today, um, just making sure that you have a vision and you have good work ethic, because I believe that with a vision, a plan, and good work ethic, you can achieve anything that you want to in life. So, yeah.
I had a feeling you would offer something astute and poignant. You never disappoint in those areas. And I'll say this, both as a fan of basketball and as someone who I'm proud to call a friend. From our first meeting, when you could tell neither of us were really sure what to make of it. I remember interviewing you, and it was right when you were going to the locker room, still in the U4 of winning a second state championship. But since that time, I've seen you. I don't want to say you were shy when I first met you, but you're confident. You're not afraid to speak your mind, no matter the subject. When the topics of social unrest came about following George Floyd's death, you weren't afraid to share your stories. And that's a podcast or a subject I would like to hear more about at some point. But whether you're getting buckets and blocks as an athlete at Maranatha or Missouri State, whether it's notching off another checkpoint on your list as a physician's assistant student, or just carrying yourself in the community, in the greater world, you're not afraid to express yourself and share your thoughts and let everyone know that you were an athlete for all those years, but no less human than the rest of us. So I have to give you props for sharing as much about yourself as you do, because it's not easy to put yourself out there, especially in moments like the civil unrest discussion when you talked about some treacherous things or some
Hmm.
unsettling moments that occurred at Missouri State. Obviously, you move forward from it, but not afraid to remind us that, hey, don't forget about us either.
Hmm. Definitely. Definitely. Very important.
And any words of advice or tips or feedback? You touched on this already, but what would you say to athletes out there who would want to be the next Onye Osemenam at Maranatha or elsewhere, getting blocks and rebounds and points, well, whatever they end up. But for
Yeah.
someone that may share your background and want to get into this field, we've seen over the years, it's become more accepting for people of Nigerian lineage to get into sports, which is what
Mhm.
the Agumakes, then they said what helped them was constant encouragement from their parents. They said, go after whatever you want and just pursue it till
Yeah.
you till you wear out. And so they
Yeah.
didn't hold
That's
back.
I was
Yep.
blessed to have that same family support as well. And it's big to have, family and friends behind you that are going to encourage you when times get rough and never let you stop. So,
For future or younger Onye Osemenams out there, or the way I phrase it, if you could meet a younger version of yourself, what would you say?
oh man, that's a great question. Um, Again, like I mentioned before, work ethic. And, you know, I think just like you said that Chinenye's parents and family said, just like picking something and being passionate about it and sticking with it and giving it your all. And I think also having a good idea, you know, because basketball is not going to be a permanent career for some people. You know, obviously, there's lots of people that I played with both in high school and college that have gone on to play professionally, and that's awesome. But um, if someone knows that that's not something that they're going to want to pursue long term, definitely having an idea in high school, like, you know, 11th, 12th grade, of what you want to do, what you want to study, so that you can set yourself up for your future career.
I can think of one thing you would tell yourself if you had the opportunity to go back in time, and something along the lines of it's okay to be tall, going back to your
Yeah.
days when you didn't want to be listed at 6 feet. I don't know how long it took to accept that, but I could see you going back and saying, you know what, go ahead and put that 6 foot on there.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And I think it's just one of those things, you know, in in middle school, elementary school, whatever, you're just kind of trying to like find your place, see where you fit in. But again, like I said earlier on, it's not about fitting in, it's about embracing yourself in every aspect.
I will leave you with this before we go, because I like to ask this of all my athletes. When you were a player, who were the athletes, college, pro, anyone? Who were the players you idolized, you looked up to?
Elena Deladon. That was that was my idol back in the day. And she was one of those, like we were talking about earlier, stretch forward. She could dribble, she could shoot, she could play defense. She was, yeah, it's definitely her.
And if you're new to this, or if you haven't met Onye before, that answer has not changed in 7 years, because I remember asking her the same question at the All-Star series.
You did, yeah, that's right.
And Elena Deladon was at the top of the list.
Yes.
I can't go wrong. I mean, hey, you can't go wrong with what she's done. And then, you know, she won a championship with Washington. I have to imagine a part of you cheered that day when the Mystics and Elena Deladon claimed that title.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was 2019. Yes, last year.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe we can find a way. Have you seen, I don't know if you ever had the chance to meet, but maybe we can work something out there too.
No, I've never met her. I have not.
All right. So we've got some bullet points to cross off here. Some bullet points on our to-do list. Find a way to get you to meet with the Agumakays and Elena, and
that'd be cool.
To see how much of a fan you really are. No, I say that in jest, because I think being the basketball player and fan that you are, you would probably get excited, to say the least.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Well, it was exciting to catch up with you. I haven't seen you in over a year, and explore all these different facets of your history that make you who you are. And I can't wait to learn more about you as we continue our friendship. My one regret, it's kind of funny how my closest friends from basketball are players that I seldom covered, and you're one of them. And that's where, if I could go back and be like, oh, would have been nice to have a few more games that your parents and your family could look back on, but we have this. So that's good for something, right?
Oh, for sure. It definitely is.
Well, Onye Osemenam, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us, and best of luck as you get ready to start the clinical portion of your studies. And whenever it's safe to gather, I hope you and I are able to do that. And I think by that point, with everything we've experienced this year, and we'll see what happens next year, we'll probably need a drink or some games or maybe some Nigerian food.
Most definitely.
To let off some steam.
Oh, yes, I agree. Thank you so much for having me on here, Mike. It's always great catching up with you, and I hope you have a great Christmas. Very Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
The same to you, Onye, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Sounds good.
And if you want to be a guest for a future episode of this podcast, just hit us up on social media at the Mike Peden on Twitter or Instagram. All you need is a good story, and we'd be happy to share it. So until next time, thanks for watching. Happy Festivus, happy holidays, and have a safe and pleasant new year.